Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for coming before the committee today. My remarks and questions will be no surprise to anyone following the news and policy issues in Oregon. Tolling. As you know, Oregon Department of Transportation has proposed tolling on Interstates 5 and 205 in Oregon. This controversial tolling affects the greater Portland metro area, including significant areas of Clackamas County. ODOT's proposal has encountered fierce opposition. My position is clear. I oppose tolling. At the local level, opposition has united Republicans, Democrats, mayors, and county commissioners, state legislators, and countless residents and commuters. The governor ordered a so-called pause on tolling until early 2026. Even so, ODOT continues its preparations for tolling. As a former mayor, which I know you would understand, I understand that funding and building infrastructure is challenging work, but this tolling proposal is not the answer for Oregon. I pledge to be part of the solution, but let's not burden our commuters or create havoc for small businesses and communities who will struggle with the impact of tolling. As you know, states proposing tolling or other major infrastructure projects are required to conduct an environmental study. ODOT's environmental assessment falls very short in numerous ways. Examples include congestion is not actually addressed. It is simply diverted from the highway to nearby city and county roads. These communities are not designed for increased traffic, which leads to safety issues and practical challenges for neighboring businesses. Number two, no actual mitigation plan or strategy. ODOT may mention mitigation or monitoring, but the filings show no cohesive mitigation plan. Vague assurances are merely given that potential issues will be addressed. Number three, tolling is an added cost for every driver, but especially low-income residents. The car remains the prime means of transportation in the region, and tolls would add to the cost of living on top of the hardships imposed by inflation and the struggling economy. ODOT has failed to engage the public on tolling. In June, an ODOT official admitted that they'd missed the mark on public outreach. Projects involving the federal government typically meet friction. Surprisingly, when it comes to tolling, it seems that the state officials can impose tolling on federal roads in face of public opposition. And despite shoddy planning and outreach, where is the due diligence and the accountability? So, Mr. Secretary, do you have the authority to deny a tolling proposal if you determine the process was conducted in a perfunctory way or serious questions remained over the project?
So anything that comes through a permitting process, including a tolling proposal, has to satisfy certain federal requirements, and we will only sign off on those if we're satisfied that those are met. So that would be delegated to federal highway, but yes, if, through that delegated authority, if something did not comply with federal law, we would block it.
Local leaders in Oregon are vocal about being left out of the process for tolling. Do you have the authority to weigh their concerns and deny tolling if you determine those concerns are valid?
As a policy matter, no, but in terms of making sure the procedures are followed, then yes. In other words, our responsibility is to make sure that the appropriate consultation happened. We don't have a position on the state policy choice.
So you do have the authority if those concerns were valid?
If NEPA is not followed, then
would
we have the authority to...
Would you agree that if the state claims they will mitigate the effects of the new tolling, that we should see the details in advance on what the mitigation before tolling would be approved?
I don't have enough familiarity with the NEPA documentation to be able to weigh in on its adequacy, but what I will say is that our Federal Highway Administration would not have signed off on any NEPA process that it did not believe had satisfied those requirements.
Do you agree that tolling should accommodate those with lower incomes or anyone from whom tolling would pose a hardship?
Again, I'm not going to dictate to states how their tolling proposals should work, but as a philosophical matter, we want to make sure that any transportation
Do you agree that local public outreach is critical before moving ahead with substantial changes to federal highways such as tolling?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of your question.
Do you agree that local public outreach is critical before moving ahead with substantial changes to the federal highways such as tolling?
Yes, that's a big part of what NEPA is about.
If the state failed to have sufficient public outreach, what actions would you take, and can you deny the project?
If a project sponsor fails to do appropriate outreach, that can lead to a NEPA failure or a Title VI concern, and in those scenarios, that could lead to the project not getting cleared by the department.
Will you deny the project if that is sufficient evidence?
Again, anytime that a project is non-compliant, we won't approve it.
Mr. Secretary, it's nice to meet you because I hadn't met you. You did come to Oregon in July. I have to tell you, we recognize that. We were not invited, even though that was very near my district. I would have loved to have had the time to show you exactly the impacts that tolling is having in Oregon. But thank you for being here today and answering these questions, and I will be following up directly because I would like you to kill this project.
Thank you.